Imagine creating a business where two people walk into a cage, one person gets punched in the face, millions watch, and somehow you make billions of dollars.
Sounds crazy, right?
But that's exactly what the UFC has done. A company that was once called human cockfighting to make turn $12 billion. Is now worth over $12 billion, fighting into one of the most profitable entertainment businesses on earth. But here's the, if fighters are the stars, why do so many fighters complain about being underpaid? Why does the UFC keep making more money every year? And why is Dana White smiling while everyone else is arguing? By the end of this video, you'll understand exactly how the UFC built a money printing machine, and you'll decide whether it's genius business or exploitation. And trust me, the final revenue stream we're covering might completely change how you see the UFC. Let's get into it. Today, the UFC looks unstoppable, but in the late 1990s, it was dying. No TV deals, no sponsors, no mainstream acceptance. Several states banned it completely. Politicians wanted it gone. The UFC was reportedly losing millions. Most people thought MMA would disappear forever. Two brothers made a gamble that looked completely insane. Renzo and Frank Fertitta bought the UFC for just $2 million. Think about that. Today, a single UFC fighter can earn more than that in one night. Then, the entire company was worth only $2 million. Everyone thought they were crazy, but they had a plan. And that plan started with one man, Dana White. Love him or hate him, you cannot tell the story of the UFC without him. Instead of trying to make MMA more violent,
they made it more professional.
Rules, weight classes, athletic commissions, regulation, safety stopped looking like a back alley fight and started looking like a real sport. That change unlocked everything. But the real money printer hadn't started yet. Not even close. The UFC was still losing money, fast. Then Dana White made what might be the smartest move in company history. A reality TV show. Sounds boring. Except this show changed the Ultimate Fighter to get the show on television. That's how desperate they were. Then came the finale. 3 rounds of absolute chaos. Drama. Everything casual fans wanted. Many people call it the most important fight in UFC history. Not because of who won, but because millions suddenly understood MMA. The next day, the UFC wasn't dying anymore. Here's a question. Do you think UFC would exist today without the Ultimate Fighter? Comment yes or no. I'm curious where you stand because fans still debate this years later. While you're down there, hit like if you've ever watched a UFC event live. Now let's talk about the real cash cow. Imagine charging millions of people $80 every time they want to watch a fight. That's basically the UFC business model. When a massive star emerges, the money goes insane. McGregor, Ronda Rousey, John Jones, Hurrah. These stars don't just win fights, and attention equals revenue. Think about it. One huge fight can generate tens of millions in sales. Sportsbooks benefit. But here's where it gets interesting. The UFC doesn't actually need every fighter to be a superstar. They only need a few stars at a time, because the UFC brand itself became bigger than anything never fully achieved. In boxing, people buy the fighter. In UFC, that's a massive difference. And it gives the UFC enormous power. We'll come back to why that's controversial later, because that's where things get spicy. The UFC depended heavily on PPV sales. Then came a game-changing deal, ESPN. Suddenly, the UFC wasn't just a fight company. It became premium sports content. Think about what ESPN needs. Content all year. The UFC delivers exactly that. No off-season. No waiting months for a championship game after fight. This consistency made the UFC incredibly valuable. The ESPN partnership guaranteed huge revenue. That's when UFC started becoming less dependent on individual superstars. The machine itself became the attraction. And that's one reason investors cash flow. Businesses dream about that. But we're still not at the biggest secret, because ticket sale and PPVs aren't where the real genius lies. Every second you're watching, someone is paying. This is why companies love sports. You can't skip the action. If a sponsor is in the middle of the octagon, millions see it, whether they want to or not. The UFC has become incredibly good at packaging attention and selling it again and again and again. Here's where opinions start dividing. Some people say this is brilliant business. Others say it's squeezing every dollar possible. And if you're enjoying this breakdown, subscribe, because we're about to get into the most controversial part of UFC economics. Now we're entering dangerous territory, because this topic starts arguments instantly. Fighter pay. Critics say UFC fighters deserve. Supporters argue the UFC built top so deserves the reward. Let's compare. Major sports leagues often share a large portion of revenue with athletes. The UFC structure is very different. This has led to criticism from fighters, journalists, and Fertitta. Others argue, without the UFC, those opportunities wouldn't exist. Responsible for the value, the fighters or the company? Personally, I think this is one of the most interesting business arguments in sports, because both sides have legitimate points. The UFC created the platform. The fighters create the spectacle. Without either one, the money disappears. So let me ask you, if UFC revenue doubled tomorrow, should fighters automatically earn more? Comment your answer. No middle ground. Yes or no. I want to see what the majority thinks. Now for the revenue stream most people completely overlook. Contents. The UFC owns an unbelievable amount of footage. Thousands of fights, thousands of interviews, years of moments, knockouts, drama, rivalries, highlights, stories. This content gets reused endlessly. Social media. National creativities, streaming platform, moments that happened years ago. The UFC can make money from moments and monetizing it forever if done. Every legendary knockout becomes an asset. Every rivalry becomes a product. It's a media company disguised as a sports league. And that's where the real magic happens. The UFC isn't just selling fights, it's selling stories.
Heroes, villains, dream babs, chaos.
Every event is a movie. Every fighter is a character, a pamp. Every rivalry is a storyline, and every storyline becomes revenue. That's why the UFC keeps growing, because humans have loved competition for thousands of years. The UFC simply found a way to package that obsession better than almost anyone else. But after everything we've covered, the biggest question remains. Is the UFC one of the greatest business success stories ever created? Or is it a company that should share more of its profits with fighters? There's no right answer, which is exactly why the debate never ends. So here's what I want you to do. Comment one word, genius, if you think UFC's business model is brilliant. Greedy, if you think fighters deserve a much bigger piece of the pie. I'm going to read every comment, and I guarantee the debate is going to be wild. If you enjoyed this video, hit like, share it with a UFC fan, and follow for more deep dives into the business behind the world's biggest companies, sports leagues, and brands. And remember, the next time you watch two fighters enter the octagon, look beyond the punches, because behind every fight, there's $1 billion business. See you in the next one.